something crosses the road. It's skeletal like, fleshy, and it stands up, and then it like kind of just almost like leaps.
They look back and they see one. Clear as day. It walked 5 feet away from my audio recorder. We just saw a Bigfoot. Holy crap.
I've been pinched, I've been tapped on the shoulder, I've had my name hollered, a hand came up underneath my left arm. I said, little son of a bitch tried to get me. That was the time that I decided you don't sleep inside that building.
Did you see that?
The cow cur, it's big, it's white, and it runs faster than any man could ever run. And he would lean out behind the tree. Listen, that's why we never go out, because the booger will get you.
There we go. Thank you.
Oh, you're
Can you hear
welcome.
me?
Yes, sir.
So, what got you into the whole Bigfoot thing?
So I was born and raised here in North Georgia, and being here in the mountains in Appalachia, we got a lot of old folklore and folk tales and everything like that. So I was in one of those families that they wasn't shy about talking about this kind of stuff, the paranormal and things that go bump in the night and stuff like that. So, of course, this was in the late 90s and early 2000s when, like, Monster Quest and all those other good shows was coming on the History Channel and Discovery Channel. So me and my dad, my mom and brothers, we would all sit and watch those shows, and then my dad would say something about, oh, there's boogers out in them woods there. You kids better watch out. They might get you. Or watching it with my grandma, she would do the same
Mhm.
thing, Yeah, I've heard stories about stuff like that when I was little, So I was used to hearing about all this kind of stuff growing up. And of course, watching The Legend of Boggy Creek is kind of a rite of
Yeah.
passage. And I was probably in my early preteens when I watched that on VHS, and that was terrifying. And so yeah, and then I had an encounter when I was 15, and now I work at Expedition Bigfoot, the Sasquatch Museum in Cherry Log, and that's kind of my life now is Bigfoot.
Yeah, I remember
So
growing
that's
up
kind
in
of
the 90s.
the short run of it, anyways.
Yeah, I remember growing up in the 90s watching Monster Quest and all that stuff as well.
hmm
Me and my dad used to watch it all the time.
Yeah,
Now,
it was a pretty good show to introduce
mhm,
that stuff to a new generation for sure. Because I think the generation prior to that had like In Search of with Leonard Nimoy
mhm,
and that kind of stuff.
yeah. What happened with your Bigfoot encounter? Can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. So I've actually had two experiences with what was most likely a Bigfoot type creature or being, whichever terminology you want to use. So the first one is I call it my main one, I guess. And I actually didn't see the creature, but I did hear it and was possibly zapped by it, if you're familiar with that. So I'll paint the picture again. Like I said, grew up here in the woods. Me, my brother, and our cousin was helping my dad and my uncle cut and chop firewood, and because that was the only source of heat that we had up here in the mountains. And they gave us kids a break, and I was 15 again. My brother would have been 12 or 13 at the time, and so my cousin probably would have been about the same age as him because I was the eldest. So anyway, they turned us kids loose, and since my cousin was new to the family, she was had just married into the family. So there is a big tree on that family property where we were at. It's referred to as the carving tree. And it's exactly that. It's a giant oak tree that generations of people have carved their name up on. And so we're like, hey, she's in part of the family now, so let's go have her put her name on the tree. So this hayfield we crossed, it's probably, several football field length long. And the grass and the hay was real tall. It hadn't been cut. So, it's probably up to my waist or higher. We go all the way to the end of the hayfield, into the tree line a little bit, and probably 100 yards into the tree line is this oak tree. And like I said, it is massive, and it's got this cool giant boulder outcrop that kind of sticks out and juddies up right next to that tree. And it's just this, it's if I could paint a picture of it, that's what I'm trying to do with my words. It's really cool looking. So I paint that picture because where I was standing, I was up on top of that rock outcrop up there. I think I had found my name where it was there previously and was kind of making it deeper or adjusting it and checking it out. My brother and my cousin were still down below. I guess they had done come up and had went down. And my brother all of a sudden got real quiet. He's like, Amanda, we should go. And I'm like, oh, we'll go in a minute. We're almost done. He's like, no, we need to go like right now. And he flips out his pocket knife and takes off running. And I'm like, oh shit, if he's running, I need to probably run in too. So I jump down off the rock and I take off running after him. So they're a little ways in front of me. But right as I get back to the tree line there at the edge of the field, and it's like a picture burned in my memory. My brother and my cousin are running through the hayfield, and the most god-awful roar, scream, howl, I don't know what you want to call it, but it was one of the loudest things I've ever heard. And it hit me from behind, and it was so loud, I covered my ears and was trying to catch myself as I'm running. And I'll kind of half look up, and I see my brother and my cousin running into the hay, and all the birds in the hay just go up out of it from the noise. And I got my feet back under me and kept running and caught up to him. I'm like, what was that? Like, what in the world is going on? And my brother's like, I think it's Bigfoot. Like, I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? No way. So we catch up to my dad and my uncle, and they can tell that we're kind of, like, what's going on, kids? And so my brother tells them what he saw, and they just kind of laughed it off, and they're like, oh, you kids done had a run in with the booger, did you? Like it was no big deal. So up here in the mountains, they refer to these things as boogers or haints. And some places, depending on where you're at, will have those terms for specific things. We kind of use them interchangeably in my family. And so what my brother described that he saw was up behind me in the woods. So it would have been uphill, kind of behind me because we were, on the side of a mountain. Probably 50 yards behind me up there was this giant orangish brown colored hairy covered man thing that had its arm up on a tree, kind of leaning out beside it, looking at us like, you kids are up in my living room, you better go or it's going to be a bad day. And he said he just got instantly like the most menacing feeling off of it. And that's when he's like, we need to go. And so, again, I never saw it because it was behind me. And so what terrifies me is like, what if I had turned around? What if I had saw that? Part of me is kind of happy that I didn't turn around and see anything like that. But, my brother and my cousin, they did see it. And what's interesting, too, is that I asked my brother later about the experience, now that we're adults. So this would have been in 2001. So it just kind of gives you an idea, showing my age a little bit. And so life and stuff happened. Me and my brother haven't got to talk to each other, really good in a really long time until this past couple Christmases ago. And so I kind of asked him about it. I was like, hey, so I'm sharing this experience a lot more, especially since I work at the Bigfoot Museum now. I just kind of want to make sure that I have all my facts straight. Am I remembering this correctly? And so I asked him, I said, one of the biggest things that I remember about that is, I didn't see this thing. You did. So I asked him what it looked like. And so that what I just described is what he saw, but he said something else that was interesting. That I also hear in a lot of reports from other witnesses is that the eyes were red and like they were emitting their own light. this is, in the middle of the day, so it's not like, it's nighttime where something could hit it and it could cause eye shine or anything like that. And he said that was what was the most terrifying thing about it, was that the eyes were red. And then I asked him, I said, "Well, did y'all hear anything that day? Because that was what I remember. I never saw it. I just heard this thing." And he's like, "Amanda, I didn't hear a thing. We just took off running, and that's all I remember." I was like, "What do you mean you don't remember hearing anything?" And so that was what was so crazy, is like, because I guess maybe I was at the end of, the three of us. So the more that I'm thinking about it now, the more that I'm looking into it, into other reports, I was like, I guess I got zapped and didn't realize it. And zap is a
Mm.
term that's used in the Bigfoot world slash community for when you're hit with infrasound,
Yeah.
and it um, mess with you, or you can hear things, or it messes with time, things like that. So yeah, that's my main Bigfoot story. We went and told my grandma about it, and she grew up on that property.
Hmm.
And we had heard my whole life that her uncle, which would have been my like two greats, Uncle Kerm, would never go back on that property since like the 1950s because there was a booger there. And we always has assumed that it was a ghost because, this is very old property.
Mm.
Before us, it was Native Americans, Civil War, all that kind of stuff. And we knew some of the places around there was haunted. So again, we assumed it was a ghost that he had saw. And once we was talking to our grandma about it, she's like, "No, that's what your Uncle Kerm said he saw. He once he talked about it, he wouldn't talk about it no more. It messed him up," is how she said it. So
Yeah,
it's interesting.
a lot of the people say they see the glare in red eyes, which interests me
Hmm.
because what makes them glow?
Exactly. That's definitely one of the many mysteries to this phenomenon, and not just Bigfoot, but other cryptids. Which then,
Yeah.
once you start looking into cryptids and Bigfoot, the paranormal UFO, you see a lot of similarities in some of these reports
Mhm.
that kind of coalesce. I'm not sure if that's the right vocabulary, where all that kind of stuff kind of intermingles with each other. And I really wish and think that if a lot of witnesses, paranormal people, Bigfoot people, Nessie people, alien people, ghost people, the more that we can come together and the more that we can talk and hash some of this out, the more answers we might find. Because I think
Yeah.
that it's a lot more interconnected than what a lot of researchers or quote unquote experts want to think.
Hmm. Yeah. Me and Dustin, the other host of the show, we think we might have had an encounter with one, but we can't absolutely say because we didn't see it. We went back on this hike to go paranormal investigating at this old
Hmm.
cemetery back in the woods. And it felt like something was watching us the whole time. And it's 11 o'clock at night, so it's dark
Hmm.
and it's eerie to begin with. So that could have just been like our minds messing with us. So we got back to the cemetery. An hour and a half later, it took us to walk back to the cemetery. And we're getting ready to investigate. We're relaxing a little bit because we just walked out on a hike. And I felt something weird looking at us. And I looked to the left of me. And I only seen one, and he seen, or I seen two, he saw one. And we saw like
Hmm.
glowing, like something glowing like about this big. I seen two, he
Mm.
said one. And I was like, look at that. And he looks and he sees it. And we're looking at this thing. It felt like a couple minutes, but it was probably a couple of seconds. So
Hmm.
we're looking at this thing, and to the right of us, we heard a tree knock. We heard a
Mm.
knock. So we look over to see like if we see anything, and we didn't see anything. So we came back to look at what we were looking at in the first place, and it was gone. There's no
Hmm.
light, nothing. Then he felt like something spoke to him. Have you ever heard like the mind speak thing? Where they say
I
they mind
haven't,
speak.
no, but I've took plenty of reports of that. So yeah.
Well, he said this thing like mind spoke to him a little bit, and it felt like he said, "You're too close to him. You need to leave." So
Hmm.
we left like right then and there. We didn't even get to do any investigating. We just left right then and there.
Yeah, that's probably was the smart thing to do. So
So
was
I mean,
the
go ahead.
lights that you saw, was they like orb-like, or did they like, so the
Yeah,
two that you saw, were they kind of close together like eyes
they
would be,
were
or are they kind of spaced apart?
pretty spaced apart.
Okay.
It was up on a hill, so it was like harder to see because there was trees
Hmm.
in the way. And I don't want to say it was Bigfoot because I'm not sure if it is or if it was just something
Yeah.
else.
Well, there's
So
so
it was
many
weird.
reports of orbs that are seen with these
Yeah,
things and other cryptids as well. So I mean, it's definitely a possibility.
yeah.
That's
So
interesting. How long ago did
um,
that happen?
um, probably a month or two before it started getting cool up here. I can actually tell you the exact date it happened because another weird thing is that same night I got this creepy voicemail um from my fiance's phone, and I have it saved on my phone. December 19th. Oh no, that can't be it. No, that can't be right. Oc- I know it's on
But
the Friday the 13th. It was on Friday the 13th. That's all I
okay,
remember.
yeah, that I think yeah, the Friday the 13th
October?
was in October or November
I
this
think so.
last couple months
Yeah.
ago. So yeah, not too long ago then. That's cool.
Mhm. Yeah. So I don't know what to say about that. It was definitely interesting. And it's by a big lake. So we went down to the lake every other day and just sat and listened. And we heard tree
Hmm.
knocks. We heard weird sounds, which could have been any animal because we're not really familiar with the sounds of different
Hmm.
animals. So it could have been anything. And one night we were standing there fishing, and he can whistle like real loud with his like however you do that with
Hmm.
your
Yeah,
hand.
I can't do that with somebody else. I
Yeah.
know people who can.
And he did it because I was like, hey, do you want to hear loud whistles? And 2 seconds after he whistled, we heard a loud whistle back that mimicked his whistle.
Oh, that's cool.
So it's, I don't know about that. It's definitely interesting.
Yeah, definitely interesting. That's really cool.
So what got you at working at the Bigfoot Museum?
Sheer luck and sheer divine intervention.
Mhm.
So, I was in a position where I wasn't working for a little while. I was actually helping care for my grandma, actually the same grandma I was talking about in the other story. Um, and so I was kind of looking for a part-time job, kind of, of course, help with the income. And here in our part of North Georgia, it's kind of an up and coming tourist area. So I had seen that they had built a Bigfoot museum up here a couple of years ago. And at first I thought, I was like, oh man, this is going to be something hokey, something corny. It's going to have these goofy animatronics. It's just going to make the whole subject matter just, some kind of laughing stock. But then I saw where I think they'd been open maybe a year or two at that time, and they were having Mr. Bob Gimlin from the Patterson Gimlin film there as a guest, and I was like, "Oh snap! Okay, that could be really cool." So I went and visited whenever he was a guest there. Me and a friend went, and I was just blown away by the museum. It's the exact opposite of anything hokey. Mr. David Becerra is the owner. It's privately owned by him and his wife, and he has put his heart and soul into this place. And I mean, he's got every kind of question that people ask, what about Native American legends? What about history? What about the bones? Footprints, movies, cats, witness testimony, all of it, and it's all packed into this museum, and it's set up so well to display that information in such a small space. It's amazing how much information he's got stuck in there. So I went there, met Mr. Gimlin and some other researchers, and got a chance to talk to Mr. Becerra. And I now call him David, so I'm just going to call him David. So I got to talk to David while I was there, and I shared my experience with him. And he thought it was very interesting as well. And so fast forward a couple of months, I happened to see that they were posting a job position there. And that again was the time whenever I was actually looking for a job, and I was like, oh, how cool would that be, to work somewhere like that. So I put my resume in the hat. I went in there and I interviewed, and turns around and I got the job. So I started working there in 2019. I actually worked there right behind Miss Sibylla Irwin. She is a very famous in the Bigfoot world now for her witness sketches that she does for witnesses to draw what they saw. And I had the great opportunity to work with her for a couple of weeks and get to know her and her work, and been working at the museum since then. I unfortunately had to leave during the pandemic. My husband unfortunately lost his job during that time. So we actually went out of state again for a little while, and came back in 2023, and they still had the job open, and I jumped right back into the saddle. And yeah, I've been there ever since. And last year, I started my own social media stuff for my own personal research. That's where Amanda the Bigfoot Lady came from. It was actually a nickname that my husband gave me. He is always saying, "Yeah, you should go talk to my wife up there. She's the Bigfoot Lady. Go talk to her. She knows about all this stuff." So I went with Amanda the Bigfoot Lady and just kind of stuck. And so that's what I've been running with.
Yeah, that's how I found you, was on TikTok. You came
Exactly. Yeah,
across
that's how a
my
lot of people have
page.
been finding. My TikTok has been blowing up, which
Hmm.
has actually been fun. I've really enjoyed the how TikTok works and the community that you can build there with that.
Yeah. Now, do you go live on TikTok at all from the museum, or do you just post
No, not while I'm
videos?
there at the museum, just because obviously I'm working there, even
Hmm.
though it is a fun job. It is still my job, and so I want to show
Yeah.
respect to them. I don't want to do anything like that. I do use some of the stuff in the museum for some props in a lot of my videos. I have a lot of fun playing with AI. I don't know why I find it fascinating that some of
Hmm.
these AI filters, that are made for human faces and things, I'll take them and put them on Raven, which is the giant Bigfoot that we have inside of the museum. He's
Hmm.
called Raven because his hair is all black, and that's what the person who made him named him. And so I run a lot of AI filters on him all the time in some of my videos, just out of curiosity to see
Hmm.
how AI thinks Bigfoot should look, or if it even accepts a Bigfoot face as a human face to work its algorithm off of, or however
Yeah.
that works in the background. That's a little bit more tech than me, but I still find it fascinating because I have a love-hate relationship with AI.
Yeah, I feel the same way. What's the most
But yeah, I haven't
interesting?
started. Oh, sorry,
No,
I
go
didn't mean to
ahead.
cut you off there. Yeah, I
No,
haven't
okay.
started doing any lives. I kind of kicked myself in the butt for that when the whole TikTok ban became a thing. As me and you both were there that night, um, I was like, man, I should have used this more from to build more, to get more, put more stuff out there. And so now that it's back, I'm definitely have plans to start doing some TikTok lives, and of course putting more content out there for everybody.
Yeah.
So
Now, what
my
do you think
apologies.
the
What was
most
your question?
interesting? What do you think the most interesting exhibit at the museum is?
Oh, the most interesting is probably the famous Bigfoot poop. And he's got an exhibit in there of a 36-inch scat specimen. Is it a replica? Yes, I'll give some behind the scenes there. But in it, it has a picture of it, and it is from Dr. Matt Johnson. He's a famous guy up in Oregon. I know he's in the Pacific Northwest. I want to say Oregon or Washington. But anyway, he has a cohabitation with Bigfoot on his property. And he was actually following tracks of one that he recognized just from the tracks as Zorth, who is the leader of that group
Mhm.
of Bigfoot. And he was following the tracks, and then sure enough, there was this nice specimen left out there for him. And so he took it, collected it, and everything. And yeah, of course, the humor isn't lost on the
Uh,
exhibit. So that would definitely be the most interesting as far as humorous and funny. And they always tease the kids. I'm like, well, you got to get DNA from somewhere, right?
yeah.
They get a laugh out of it. One of the more interesting ones on the other side, I personally really love the set of overalls that he has on display in the museum. They were donated by a gentleman who visited, and it's just a pair of Carhartt overalls. And that particular thing has the story behind it, which is what's so fascinating, is that this gentleman was prospecting in Alaska, and probably 10 years prior, he had a run-in with a Bigfoot, and instead of shooting at it, he decided to lower his gun and and let it go. It was he could tell, it was young, it was a juvenile, it wasn't trying to hurt him or anything. He was scared, obviously, the raise of the gun. So he let
Mhm.
it go. Fast forward, this gentleman is fishing on one of the rivers there. He's got all the gear on, those overalls, and he falls in the river and he's drowning because all the gear. Next thing he knows, he's being grabbed up by those overalls and flung up onto the shoreline. And it's the same Bigfoot from a couple of years prior pulled him up out of the river with those strap of overalls and saved his life from drowning. And so David has those overalls and that story on display there. So that one is just so cool to me.
That is a very interesting story.
Yeah, it's really cool. And if I got to meet the guy, he's still here. He's around. He comes into the museum every now and then, so I get to chat with him and hey, how you doing? And he's just average Joe or
I like to
fisherman,
talk to him.
outdoors guy.
I like to talk to him about that. That'd be cool
Yeah.
conversation. Yeah. Um, what do you think Bigfoot is? Do you think he's a real thing, or do you think it's something more paranormal?
I think it's actually a combination of both. I think that they are physical beings that have paranormal and supernatural abilities. Now, whether they are on our plane of dimension or on our side of the veil of reality, whichever pseudoscience term you want to use, that I don't know. Just from my personal experiences, family stories, tales that I've heard from other witnesses who have come in and shared things. Um, yeah, a lot of people are stuck on it being flesh and blood, but again, I definitely think that they are both because they bleed, they reproduce, they leave footprints that have dermal ridges, fingerprints on the soles of their feet. They have hair that they leave behind. They have all these physical attributes, but they also have a lot of, again, supernatural, paranormal abilities. So again,
Yeah,
whether they're here or there, I don't know. That's definitely the mystery to it.
yeah. I believe the same thing. I believe there's something else to them besides a flesh and blood creature, whether it's an
Absolutely.
alien or another dimension
Yeah.
creature.
Yeah, alien, whether it's alien as in like interdimensional or alien
Hmm.
as in extra dimensional
Yeah,
or terrestrial, not dimensional.
yeah.
Yeah, intraterrestrial, extraterrestrial, um or if they're descendants from biblical Nephilim, from the
Hmm.
biblical standpoints and other you know ancient text.
Yeah.
There's so many mysteries in this world, and this is
Hmm.
only one of them.
Now, the big question is, once it gets discovered, it's going to be a whole train wreck whenever Bigfoot gets discovered. How much do you think it's going to affect the people if it is, or the economy if it is discovered?
Oh, I think it's going to have a huge effect. I think that, me and you, obviously, and a lot of people in this world, and I think our own powers that be. I'll try to watch my verbiage so I don't mess you up your YouTube or anything. I think a lot of those our powers that be already know that they exist. I mean, they just
Mm-hmm.
came out and said that aliens are real.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that they already do. I mean, there's declassified FBI files now about this.
Mm-hmm.
There's been what's the words I'm looking for? Where you're looking, you go to them for information, declassified information, information request. There's
Yeah.
records of that.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many reports and stories out there from people um, in in uniform, military people, um,
Yeah.
officers, mi-
Mm-hmm.
um, police officers, and 90% of the time, they're told to, we don't talk about it. This is hush hush. You talk
Be
about
quiet.
it, it's the end of the road for
Mm-hmm.
you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely think that they already know, and I believe that there is just the reasons why they're not talking about it is because one, it's not just an animal. So I mean, it's not just a
Yeah.
big monkey that's out here. You know, if it's a person, which I think that they are, how do you define a person? How do you
Mm-hmm.
define consciousness?
Yeah.
So, and then, if it is a person, if it's a species, just look into it. We'll just set everything over there into that camp. If it's just a Neanderthal man or, some type of Aboriginal people,
Mm-hmm.
are they going to try to tax them? Then if it's an animal, is it considered endangered? And is that going to mess up lands and territory? And then they're going to have more than just what national forests they have. They're going to have these, protected areas, and that's going to affect the logging
Yeah.
industries. That's going to
Mm-hmm.
affect where people build their homes, and that's just going to have a ripple effect throughout the economy. On top of, again, asking whether or not they can tax them.
Yeah.
And again, these things are obviously much smarter than we are to be able to go from one side of the veil to the next.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just something that they think that the general public isn't ready for. They're not
Yeah.
ready to share that kind of knowledge because I think it goes much deeper. Because again, once you start looking into Bigfoot, it starts pulling up things like Dogman, Mothman, um, Sheep Squatch,
Mm-hmm.
all these crazy
Yeah.
words that people used to describe these cryptid creatures.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot more to it than um, what they want to say. And again, I'm being very vague just because I don't want to mess you up.
Yeah, you're good. Now once this thing gets discovered, do you think the mystery's still going to be there, or do you think it's going to be completely gone?
Oh no, I think the mystery will still be there because there's so much um, unknown about it. Again, how do how do their eyes glow in
Yeah.
there when during the day? How do they disappear in front of you, shimmer out like the predator? How do they, go walk into a tree and then disappear and they're not there anymore? Where do these children that they snatch? Where do they go?
Yeah.
There's still going to be a lot to unravel because I mean, look at um, just like I'm looking at my cat over here in the floor.
Mm-hmm.
They still don't know a lot about them. Do they dream? How do they communicate with each other? How
Mm-hmm.
different anatomical abilities that they have. And their household pets. They're
Yeah.
very common. We have veterinary medicine for them, and
Mm-hmm.
books and TV shows and everything. And they've been around and been around us humans for thousands of years, but we're still discovering mysteries about them. So I mean, it
Mm-hmm.
it would be a very very long time to unravel anything like that with these beings.
Yeah. We're actually coming up on our time, so
Okay.
Maybe once Dustin's able to come back, we can have you on again and we can talk more.
Absolutely. I'd be glad to come on and talk more. Yeah, I've got tons of stories I can share. I have tons of more personal paranormal experiences that I can share. And obviously, I got tons of stories
Mhm.
from the museum that I'd be willing to share with you.
Yeah, we'd like to have you back on and talk about maybe paranormal stuff next time as well.
That would be fun. That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, absolutely. We'll see you next time.
See ya. Do that. End the recording.